Amazing. Hello. I think we are going to get this started now. So to start, hello everyone. Welcome to the Superchain quarterly webinar with Token Relations. This is our second one with the team. Joining me today is Optimism co-founder and OP Lab CEO Karl Floersch and Skeletor, the co-founder of Wonderland, which is a core development group for Web3. In addition to this discussion we're having, we will open up the floor to Q&A at the end from community members. So if you have questions, feel free to post them and we will hopefully be able to get to them. With that said, I think it's always helpful to start with some background and context. So the Superchain, which consists of a collective of a bunch of different chains, building with the OP stack tech, currently has over $13 billion total assets on chain. The daily average transaction volume is about 4.81 million, up 4% on the week across all chains with the ecosystems, and it hit new highs in July, around 5.2 million. During our first webinar together last quarter, we discussed what's driving growth with Optimism's Chief Growth Officer, Ryan Wyatt. Given that the ecosystem is still seeing sustained growth and an increase across a number of metrics, Karl, I want to start with you. What do you think is bringing additional momentum to the Superchain, especially in this most recent quarter?
Yeah, I think a lot of developers are starting to see the benefits of building on a shared standard, the OP stack, and of course, where there are developers, there will be chains, and we are starting to see more and more of them pop up. And I think this is honestly just the beginning. We're going to talk about interoperability, but after that, oh my goodness, I think that's going to, really be another catalyst. But we're already starting to see the formation of the power of having a shared standard for layer 2, moving from a bit more, moving towards more cooperation and more composability.
I like the enthusiasm. It's getting me excited about it all. The Superchain is already pretty massive. I see it all over crypto Twitter. You guys have a lot of amazing chains in it. I think it's over 20 chains right now within the Superchain ecosystem. Correct me if I'm wrong. And to your point, Karl, there's been a recent announcement about the Superchain's vision of creating a unified network of chains. And before we get into the latter vision, what do you think is kind of like driving more chains to join the Superchain opposed to other L2 ecosystems out there?
I do think it's the shared standard. I think it's the open source, really values alignment. We're scaling Ethereum and both scaling Ethereum technology as well as scaling Ethereum values. Also, retroactive public goods funding, a key part of this is that, transaction fees go back into funding the ecosystem, and retroactive public goods funding is its really exciting way to essentially grow the open source software and other public goods that every single person benefits from. And then of course, optimism governance, decentralization, being able to really have this, we have this whole like two house system where we have the token house as well as the citizens house. So it's not just plutocratic. We're really working towards making a kind of representative, decentralized governance system that is worthy in a way of governing a shared standard that we're all going to rely on. So I think, yeah. I'm sold. I'm sold on it. I build on it. Sounds good to me.
So. I hope you're sold. Skeletor, for you, what about for you and Wonderland? Why did it decide to collaborate with Optimism?
Yeah, that's a good question. So +1 to everything that Karl said. I think software it's just like ones and zeros. Optimism brings kind of the human element to it, right? It's everything he said. It's like the ethos, it's the culture, it's the governance, it's everything else. We are barely on the first steps of this adventure, right? Of scaling Ethereum. We are just getting started. All of the things that will get built are going to get built better as a community and with a collaborative effort. So that's why we chose them. Like we choose basically the kings of each vertical on the space. Optimism is by far the best team to be working alongside on this vision.
Yeah. Skeletor, you brought up scaling, and I feel like that is something that is always discussed in the Ethereum ecosystem and across crypto as a whole. How do you two kind of look at scaling the ecosystem And Karl, which metrics do you see as like the most promising within the Superchain to finish out 2024? I feel like a lot of times people are just throwing metrics everywhere, but for you, which ones are you really monitoring?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely the, amount of developer activity, the amount of transactions, and also the amount of chains that are reaching major decentralization milestones, like getting to stage 1 and, all working together on a shared standard. That those milestones, and we're actually, we're moving a long way towards that. We're at 39% of layer 2 transactions. We got this like really nice Superchain, dashboard that people can look at, that just like shows the more people on the shared standard. And I actually think that I'll honestly connect this to something that like Skeletor kind of made me realize is just, it's really important to clarify that what we are building towards is not necessarily a specific thing that is like, out there. It is instead a kind of vision to achieve a shared standard that we can all, benefit from. That is the Ethereum vision. That is like, Ethereum is both a kind of a goalpost as well as a tangible thing that you can interact with. And so, I'm just really excited as more and more people are, unified behind shared standards, and that results in more and more transaction volume, and that results in more and more, growth for every single person involved.
Yeah. Skeletor, what do you think?
I think this stream is missing kind of the emojis to put like hearts and fires whenever Karl talks. Because I 100% agree. I mean, scalability obviously right now, or like even more like a year later and 2 years ago, it was one thing. Today is like this specific, okay, let's horizontally scale L2s. A year later or 5 years later, the future is going to be completely different, right? So we don't know. We need a way to collaborate on these very, very hard problems. And this is the hard things that Optimism is doing, right?
Right. What do you think it would look like in 5 years, now that you brought that up?
Ooh, that's a good question.
With your crystal ball.
Yeah, exactly. With my magic powers, I have no idea. Probably we'll see a lot more CK. That what we're seeing today is going to get way more mainstream. But besides that, hopefully a lot of adoption. And if not, we'll just keep building.
Mm-hmm.
Can I say, I think another thing, I just want people to use crypto and not realize they're using crypto, but benefit from crypto. Wouldn't that be amazing? Like, I want new applications that otherwise are not possible because we're all on a shared stand. We're all composable with each other. We're like building on top of each other as applications. And that just creates a kind of new ecosystem of like a diverse set of applications. I really don't think that people realize, because it's really hard to imagine like what things could be or what the future could be. But like, I just feel so, when I'm on my computer, to be honest, I feel like very limited. I feel like very boxed in. I feel like I can't express myself. I can't express myself as a creator. I can't, enjoy all of the incredible creations. Like, they're all like in these very rigid boxes. And so I'm just like super excited to see this, what I think would be an explosion of creativity if we can work together on a shared, unified, composable world computer superchain platform,
Yeah, of course. I think also, going to your point, Karl, about like building something that people actually want to use. It sounds so trivial, but it's so important. And it's not just for people in this space, but people outside of this space. Like, where do they really see value, or where do they see a lack of today? Like you said, when you're on here on the internet, you feel like disconnected. How do other people outside of Web3 feel, and what can Web3 provide to kind of like bridge that gap? Yeah. Hopefully someone figures that. Yeah.
Yes. And it's not going to be us, right? I think it's like, it's always going to be like passing the torch to the next person, to the broader community. And that's like part of the reason for decentralization. It's like, build together, benefit together, working together towards this like, shared aim through standardization.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I think in this past quarter, for both of you, what do you think has been the biggest sectors or areas for growth from builders? Like, where are you seeing a lot of development happening?
Skeletor, you want to take it?
Yeah.
I mean,
I can try.
Go for it.
Yeah. I can for it. So, I mean, we've seen a lot, like going around on identity and on kind of bridging the gap between some off-chain and on-chain stuff, kind of in the most secure and decentralized way, which in the past have been more, kind of tied to, let's say, centralized, controlled oracles or other type of services. So we've seen a lot of kind of this shift to, self-sovereignty in a lot of the areas that we haven't seen before. Obviously, DeFi was like the money is on chain, so it's easy. There are a lot of things that are not on chain that is kind of hard to bring on chain. CK is helping a lot, but there are a lot of other primitives and a lot of other projects that are working to trying to bridge this gap.
Yeah. I see you nodding, Karl. You agree?
100%. And I would just say that at a high level, I think that right now we're just like in the world of, leading indicators where I just am incredibly impressed by the, caliber and creativity of the application builders that I'm like seeing at various events who are like super jazzed about deploying on the Superchain. They're building out different applications. Like there's so much energy and like people see the potential, right? And I think it's really just that we've been limited for so long from an infrastructure perspective because of scalability, because of a lack of interoperability between these chains. Like all of the kind of components are coming together and we're starting to see people building things that otherwise weren't possible. And I mean, I'll just, plug, of course, like we're still building out this interoperability stuff, the making it so that chains can talk to each other. And we're just seeing all of these like application developers or kind of infrastructure application developers, some space in between, take the specs that are open and, collaborate in the, in the public as we work in the public to already build on the kind of work in progress standards or suggest improvements and all this kind of stuff. So it really feels like an industry effort. Obviously Wonderland is like, a great example of this, where it's just, we're collaborating across the ecosystem to create a better interoperability standard that, now these application developers have a new playground that they can start playing with.
Yeah, on the note of interoperability, how does Optimism plan to grow the Superchain in a clear way that makes it more unified? Given there's so many chains in the in the Superchain as a whole, there's more joining. A lot of them are using OP Stack tech. How do you kind of bring them all together and feel as if they are underneath like one roof today?
Yeah, it's a really challenging. Yeah, it's a really challenging problem. Like there is a fundamental trade-off between standardization and customization, right? Like the more you standardize, the less you customize, and obviously the more you customize, the less you standardize. And so there's this interesting world where we're in the open source space. And so that means that forkability is so easy, and it's a superpower. And forkability is the ultimate form of customization. You can make any change to the OP stack you want. It is MIT licensed. It is a public good that we are trying to build together for the ecosystem. However, if we don't we're building together, but in order to quote unquote benefit together, we need to build on the same standard. We need the same standard. Why? Well, it's because if you talk different languages, you can't work together. If you, and the big value add of crypto, I think as a whole, is composability. It's bridge building. It's enabling people to work together that otherwise were not able to work together. And so this like tension is really hard to navigate. And I would say that, it's a non-trivial challenge. But what we're doing is we are working to essentially get to a point where we at least have standards around the customizations. So it's a little confusing, but basically we want to make sure that, with things like the block space charters, we know the different types, the different categories of chains, and we can bring folks together into that, ecosystem. And we're, focusing on the standard interoperable block space, and then going to not only kind of say, oh, standardization is great, but show that standardization is great with actually shipping secure interoperability between these chains so that they can all, the value and the users and all this stuff, we can all work together and, create a more composable and positive sum ecosystem. So it'll be a challenge, right? We're trying to like wrangle a whole community. But actually I would say that open source, it's really great for forkability, but I think that the most incredible thing is that when you have an open source standard that anyone can contribute to, everyone can feel ownership over it. And that ownership enables everyone to interoperate in a way that they otherwise wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I would hope that those that are already within the Superchain would want to come to a better consensus, right?
Yes.
One would hope. Yeah.
It's it's great for everyone, right? Like that is just an amazing thing that like we can actually work together towards a shared aim. Like, many opportunities for division. I'm very blessed to be working on unification.
So with the announcement towards a unified Superchain, there's two parts to it, right? So there's the block space charters, and then there's the Superchain registry, which we'll get to after. But for block space charters, for those who don't know, it's a technical governing framework that brings in requirements for the chain within the Superchain. How is that kind of determined, and over what period will that be rolled out, Karl?
Yeah. So everything is determined, by Optimism governance broadly, but the way that it's rolled out is that we're, drafting up the initial block space charters. For example, block space charter for standard block space, that is like the kind of premier, mainline, chain type. And then, Alt-DA and other types of block space are will come as well. But yeah, so then we have a clear definition of the block space, of the standard in a way, and also have a clear pathway for customization. And that's a kind of tool that allows everyone to consolidate around it and then start interoperating with the technical interop standards.
Okay. And then there is the Superchain registry, which I also brought up, which will operate as a quote unquote source of truth for all Superchain members. How will this kind of change the way the Superchain ecosystem operates compared to, let's say, today or even in the past?
Totally. So, once you have a registry of all of these chains and you know that they're all on the same standard, what does that do? That allows you to either sync any of the chains if you're running a node, or deploy to any of the chains or all of the chains. And Wonderland is building out things like the Super ERC20 standard, which is compatible with all of these various chains. So it's simultaneously giving the ability to essentially identify who is a part of this interoperable superchain. And then, what that enables is the composability of various applications like the Super ERC20 for, token transfers once the interop protocol is ready.
Yeah. Skeletor, I guess you could chime in on this part too. And Karl, I'm curious your thoughts on this, but I think, for me as someone who is involved across the whole crypto ecosystem, I'm not like tethered to one chain or another. I see extreme value in interoperability. But for those who might not see the value, how would you kind of explain that to them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think first you need to separate the who's. There is like standard users, which the end goal is for them to not even notice that they are interacting with different chains. Those chains being part of the super chain or being different L1s, different L2s, whatever, right? That's the end goal. Then you run out of user experience in crypto, which we're very far away from, but we are getting there. the second user group is your developers, both infrastructure developers and dApp developers. And for them, there is like a super clear value in using the Superchain just because of the standards and everything that Karl was mentioning, because it allows you to build something very, very simple that works on a lot of different use cases. And it allows you to also kind of be future-proof on a lot of the different things that might come afterwards with different chains. And I think we which is very, like, it's somewhat tricky, but we are creating kind of a new type of developer, which is the chain developer. I believe that there are going to be these kind of microservice chains that will appear that will provide a very, very specific service that those chains might be treated as you would treat, let's say, an API on a Web 2 or an external service, let's say Stripe or whatever, and you can basically add those microservices chains into your dependency set, and you basically like instantly get that service. You don't need to deploy anything. You don't need to do anything else. There is a lot of problems right now, which a lot of different protocols and like crypto developers in general have, which is having to support all of these different flavors of L2s, even if they share the same EVM primitives, even if some of them have the underlying protocols that they are using. This is a mess right now. Superchain, you don't care about that. You just use Uniswap on this chain. You use, this lending market on this other chain, and let Interop do its thing and communicate between all of these primitives.
Karl, I see you nodding. You want to add to
Oh,
that?
I mean, yeah, no, I think nothing really to add. Just vibe and exactly agree with Skeletor here.
I think I really like the way you put it, Skeletor, in that it's like a chain developer. It's very interoperable in that sense, and it's not tethered to one or another. But does that pull market share away from, let's say, the Superchain, for example? And is that a problem if it does, or is you guys are cool with that?
Oh, from my perspective, absolutely not. It's like building on top of. It's like adding more value to the whole Superchain. You're not losing anything, quite the opposite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. In a way, you could say that the Superchain is literally just expanding the developer capabilities, and therefore expanding the application capabilities that are then possible once you build on top. And that's actually part of the thing that I'm most excited by, like right now, is all of these application developers using those new capabilities to build things that otherwise would not be possible. Because we are at that, like, we are very much at that build phase right before we actually deliver user value. So we still need to deliver user value. So we got to make those fundamental unlocks first.
Yeah. What do you think, with everything that we kind of just discussed on this topic, could cross-chain communication, multi-chain applications, etc., bring to the ecosystem that we don't already have today?
I mean, I'll say one thing that it takes away from the ecosystem is the absolutely horrific experience that is moving between these different chain ecosystems. Like, I do think that there's going to be, notions of different block space and like different kinds of block space and ecosystems, and you can like feel like you're part of a particular, group. But the problem is right now, I'm a member of a bunch of different, groups. I'm like, I have assets across all these different chains, and I'm like, okay, how do I actually go to a new one, or how do I rebalance between them, or how do I, transact here and there? And it is horrible.
Yeah.
It is brutal. So I am excited for us unifying the space a little bit, just personally, selfishly.
Yeah. And that's coming from someone who's like deeply involved in the space.
Oh,
now imagine trying to
yeah.
bring that to someone outside the space.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like Vitalik was talking about how he lost a bunch of money trying to transfer between chains. Like,
Oh my gosh,
if the creators here are having deep issues, like we have some challenges. But I do think okay, on the bright side, right? That's but
Of course.
got to be a little optimistic. On the bright side, we have line of sight to a solution, right? Like this is not an actually very hard problem. This is not I mean, it's obviously very challenging, but like it is not insurmountable by any means. And I think we'll see the benefits come decently quickly.
Do you think there's any other impediments in the space that are kind of hindering expansion?
Oh yeah, I mean the whole wallet experience. I'm curious. Yeah, Skeletor though. I could go on a rant.
Rant away. No, but yeah,
Right.
I mean, UX wise, it's going to be a problem. The off-chain part, like having to deal with a lot of the RPCs, a lot of the nodes, it's also going to be a pain. I mean, Rust developers Rust platforms help a lot there to kind of remove that complexity away from chain operators. But yeah, there is a lot of work that is not necessarily on-chain that really, really needs to happen. For it to happen, we first need the on-chain part for that to be built on top, right? It won't come earlier than that. So yeah, that's why a lot of effort is being put into shipping this.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's just a matter of time as well for a lot of these things too. It takes time to develop these things and build them out. 100%. Before we go into kind of like forward-looking conversations, I would like to remind people who are listening in. I know we've got thousands of people listening, which is great. If you have questions, leave them in the comments and we will get to a few of them. Not thousands, hopefully not thousands, but we'll see. Anyways, looking to the future, I wanted to discuss the outlook for the rest of the year for the Superchain, as well as looking to 2025, which is crazy that we're nearing that point. Anyways, we've covered a lot of ground here and the momentum is really strong. I personally think behind the Superchain, I'm seeing a lot of growth there, healthy metrics and user engagement, as well as like daily transactions, etc. And the Optimism Foundation is rolling out, a lot of initiatives to expand it, as we've kind of talked about. We also touched base briefly on the topic of decentralization, which is extremely important for all blockchains, I would hope. And when you're looking at decentralization of this technology and the OP stack, Karl, can you kind of like walk us through how you see it expanding in the near term and long term? When can we expect stage 2?
Nice. Yes. Okay. So first, I'll walk you through it. Type in L2Beat into your web browser, and you can look
and
I'm
see. Familiar with that website.
And just keep refreshing every day, and we will start to see the top list of chains. All the ones that have like a little OP next to them. They're gonna go stage 0, and they're gonna turn stage 1, stage 1, stage 1, because it is. I'm super excited. We of course we shipped stage 1 fall proofs, permissionless, proposals and all these kinds of things to OP mainnet. And so yes, we have a stage 1 little banner next to OP mainnet, but it's the Superchain. That doesn't matter until we have every single chain in the Superchain at stage 1, and we are making fast progress there. So I'm super pumped to see that happen. That's 1, and then 2. Stage 1 doesn't matter. I'm sorry. No, stage 1 is important. It's critically important, but it's stage 2 or bust, right? It's really what matters is getting to the end goal of decentralization as defined by the kind of like, standard framework where stage 1, yes, you have fault proofs. Yes, it is, working to an extent, but you still have training wheels. Stage 2 is when you remove those training wheels. You might ask, how do you remove the training wheels? Yes. Well, the way, great question. The way that you remove these training wheels is you do what all the is standard practice for incredibly mission critical software and hardware, which is you add redundancy. So if y'all heard, I don't know, if y'all heard about the Boeing 737 Max, be careful on this. No, I'm just kidding. But the whole issue with why those planes horrible things happen is because they didn't have redundancy. They didn't, or not sufficient redundancy. And so, there are multiple sensors that are supposed to, check each other. And if one fails, then you can fall over to the other and all that kind of stuff. That's how you create a system that can, fly on autopilot. And in order to be decentralized, it needs to be on autopilot. And so, stage 2, it's all about having multiple proof systems, which are already in the works. We've got, again, working in the public. You can look at Kona. It's really exciting. We have a whole rough stack, OP-Ref and Magi and all these things coming together in Kona, this, program. Anyway, could go into the details, but TLDR is that we got a whole parallel system, 2 sensors, and one of them is running in production, and we're going to get the other one running in production as soon as possible and flip the switch and go on autopilot and reach stage 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought Skeletor was going to say something, but on that note, how would you define true decentralization? Because I feel like that term is thrown around a lot. And like, when do you feel like, okay, we are there, we made it? Is it stage 2? Is it something else? And how would you define what that looks like?
Great. So stage 2 is definitely, I would say that's like pretty true decentralization, but I will caveat it, which is stage 2 is really where you have a incredibly robust right to exit. If there's any kind of like upgrade system that goes through governance that you don't like as a user, you're able to either migrate out or fork away, because the system will allow you to exit before any upgrades pass. That is really important, enforcing the right to exit. But there are really 2 things that I think are critically important to decentralization, and that's right to exit without question, but that's also right to voice. You need to be able to influence governance, and governance needs to be representative of the constituents, and it needs to be decentralized. Power needs to be distributed, and the votes need to be distributed, et cetera, et cetera. And so I actually think that a really critical part of decentralization is expanding the citizens' house, ensuring that the optimism governance is taking into consideration all constituent stakeholders, et cetera. So I think there are more things that we can do, but stage 2, I'll still check the box. That's real decentralization.
Skeletor, for developers, why is this so important to have decentralization, especially today?
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely be like knowing what you're building on and basically betting your life and your time on is going to be there, not change. Like the rules are set for everybody. There is no central authority that can screw you over or your users. I mean, that's most likely why most of the developers in Web3 joined the space, right? Like, besides the crazy people that do this for the love of art and build just crazy projects out of just like pure technology, most of us come from a background where we know or have experienced this type of issues in the real world, let's say the Web2 space or your day-to-day, where the rules are kind of not set for everybody the same. So I think that's mostly it, right? For now, as Karl said, we are on the path to true decentralization, and it's basically a matter of just getting there. Like the path has been set, it's just coding away and chipping out the issues and the problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. For the people outside of the Web3 space, how do you kind of explain that mission to them and that vision in a way that maybe they can understand? Because for a lot of people, this isn't a part of their everyday vocabulary. They don't understand this. How can you make them feel the same way and understand that this is important?
Ooh, I can take that one. I mean, it really depends. For example, I'm Argentinian. So people in Argentina have had hyperinflation and a lot of issues with corruption, with monetary policies, etc., etc. So for them, and this is also why you will see a lot of Argentinian Web3 developers, this is the most logical evolution of economy, of communication, of shared computation, etc., etc. For people who haven't experienced these things, and they say, "Oh, I just put my money in the bank; it works. Why should I use Ethereum? I can just use Kraken or this other like centralized exchange or whatever, or my broker. It works, and basically serves the purpose that I need for it to serve, until something bad happens. And eventually bad things happen. And people will say, oh, okay, what's the alternative? Right now, the alternative is way more expensive, way more complex, way more, I don't know. It doesn't have the same stigma as the standard Web2 things. There are a lot of kind of narratives around Web3, blah, blah, blah. So it's not the same. Obviously, maybe my grandma, because she's Argentinian, will use Web3. But if I had a grandma on the States or anybody else, or like anywhere else, she won't have the kind of the requirement to use it, because she can access all the financial services if she wants to. So that's sadly, you need like a kind of a catastrophic event or a bad event for people to realize that there is a better alternative. But on the bright side, if everybody were to migrate to Web3 right now, it will explode. So bit by bit, we'll need to
gotta scale it over time.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Before we go into a few of the community questions, again, if you have them, feel free to send them. I wanted to ask you both, aside from everything that we've talked about thus far, what else are you focusing on for the rest of 2024? Are there certain sectors or areas that you think are super important that the listeners should be, paying attention to? Kind of tell us where your thoughts are at.
I mean, to be honest, my brain is basically 110% full of delivering secure interop. Of course, and getting that includes first getting a bunch of chains to stage 1 and then unifying them with this interoperability standard. I think other than that, I think the only other thing that I will call out is defaulting to public. We are working to expand the number of core developers and the amount of work that happens in the open, the collaborations across different teams, across the ecosystem, because that is the way that we're going to actually scale up execution, is by embracing the decentralization of the execution happening. And we're really already seeing that. Obviously, Wonderland, Skeletor, et cetera, is, a great example, but like, various folks across the ecosystem are contributing to everything from clients to proofs to audits. Like literally a community-led fall proof audit happened just recently. Like really incredible stuff to see the community grow. And I think that's the key to delivering secure interop, shipping stage 2, stage 1, then stage 2, and bringing everyone together with a composable shared standard.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would add, like, there are a lot of new primitives and tools that we are building with Interop, and that will be possible with all of these things that we're building. So as Karl said, go to the GitHub, go to all the public material, code base, everything is being built there. Conversations are happening there. If you want to start learning and have an idea, just go there and like start a conversation. Like we'll be more than happy to reply, to collaborate with you. Try to get into these new primitives. They're going to be great.
Yeah, the way that I got into the Ethereum space was watching YouTube videos with 15 views on them on like deep, Ethereum consensus protocol research. So you'd be surprised, like the stuff is out there. The incredibly talented folks are talking, and you can listen in and learn and
100%
contribute.
Yeah, and hopefully, maybe someone will watch this video and feel the same way, Karl.
Yes, I hope so. Spread the love. It's so great.
One of the questions that was asked from the community, there was actually 2 regarding ZK technology. So the first one was, and I'll combine them together because I think they fit.
Yeah.
Will ZK OP chains be a part of the Superchain? And then what's your take on OP stack chains switching to ZK rollups? Should they do so?
Yes, everyone's like, when ZK? Well, the key is that
Awesome.
the OP stack is not an optimistic rollup, not a ZK rollup. We are a rollup. We have a proof system, which is a multi-proof system. What does that mean? That means that we do not discriminate based on what kind of proof. Fault proofs, they are production ready. They are, easier to reason about. They don't rely on incredibly intense cryptography. They're very performant, all of these things. That's what makes fault proofs really, really nice, to rely on today. And that's kind of why we took the first stab with fault proofs, and we are, rolling that out, that system. Zero knowledge proofs are incredibly promising. They have really useful properties. However, they are, still not as performant as they need to be necessarily. And also they are reliant on, cryptography that still is, still needs more proofs, more lindiness, etc. Here's the crazy thing though. Here's the crazy thing. We're not choosing either or. We are going to be layering proofs together. We're going to be layering multiple fault proofs together. That's that like multiple sensors on the airplane type thing. We're layering multiple fault proofs together. Then what are we going to do? We're going to layer multiple zero knowledge proofs together. And if you don't believe me, look at the incredible work that Risk Zero and Succinct and others and O1, they've all been working on zero knowledge proving the OP stack. It is already possible, technically it's possible, to zero knowledge prove every block on OP mainnet, or actually really any standard chain. It is technically possible. People have done it. People have built it. It's just very expensive and not yet kind of production ready. So what does that mean? That means that we just need to get to a point where we're iterating on it, improving on it, and getting the cost down. And then eventually maybe, the whole world will go ZK and, all of the fault proofs will go away, but maybe not. Maybe we will always have a fault proof as one such system, but we will be benefiting from all of the niceness of zero knowledge proofs as well. So this is really not an either or. It's really easy in Twitter to be like this or that. Let's go to war and get mad at each other. No, we are bringing people together, including the optimistic rollup community and the zero knowledge rollup community.
Amazing. Great. Well, I think one last thing I want to ask of you guys. This will be airing on my podcast, Talking Tokens. And something that I always ask the guests at the end is if you could leave us with a piece of advice for the listeners.
I can start. Build in the open and collaborate. There's a lot of free resources, a lot of very right people, as Karl said, doing the same thing. Take advantage of that. Don't get behind your computer and silo yourself out. Just go out there. There are a lot of resources and a lot of conversations happening. So build together.
Amazing. Karl?
Oh man. I mean, that's it. It's build together, build bridges, build in the open, build standards, build open source. There's so much out there. There's so many things that we can do. We need more bridge builders. We need more, more plurality. So I don't know. That you sold me, Skeletor. That's the right way.
Sold me too. Amazing. Well, thank you, Skeletor and Karl, for taking the time and sharing your comments and thoughts. Super insightful. Looking forward to talking again next quarter. And that's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.